My name is Julian Hart, and for most of my life, I believed my mother was the most predictable person in the world. She woke early, packed the same oatmeal breakfast, kept our little rented duplex running like a clock, and repeated routines with almost sacred devotion. But there was one routine I never questioned. Every Tuesday at 11:06 a.m., my mother left the house. Not 11, not 11:10, exactly 11:06. She always wore her good coat, the navy one with worn elbows. She always carried the same brown leather purse, and she always returned 2 hours later, her face pale, her steps careful, her mood muted. When I was a kid, I assumed she just had a strict schedule at her job at the bakery, even though Tuesdays weren't work days for her. When I became a teenager, I chalked it up to grown-up errands, things she never bothered to explain because she worked two jobs to keep the lights on. I never pried. But now I'm 28, and what I learned last winter has carved itself into my memory so deeply that I don't think I will ever fully escape it. The truth is, if that chain of events hadn't happened, if my car hadn't stalled that Tuesday morning, if my work schedule hadn't changed, if I hadn't been sitting near the window when she left, I might still be blind. It started with something small, a tremor, a tiny shake in her right hand when she buttoned her coat. I had never seen her hands shake, not once, not even when bills were overdue, not even when my father left, not even when she worked 16-hour days. "You okay?" I asked, standing in the kitchen doorway. She flinched like she didn't expect to be seen. "Fine, sweetheart. Just running an errand." "On a Tuesday," I said without thinking. "Like always." Her hand froze on the last button. She didn't turn around. "Yes, like always." She left exactly at 11:06. When the door closed behind her, something inside me tightened. I stared at the clock, stared at the door, stared at the space she'd just been standing in, and for the first time in my life, I couldn't let it go. I grabbed my coat and followed. I kept several car lengths behind her old bronze Hyundai. I felt ridiculous, like some suspicious character in a B-movie, but something in my gut refused to stay home. My mother had raised me on honesty, hard work, and the belief that trust was the most precious currency in life. And yet, I suddenly realized I knew nothing about her Tuesdays. She drove downtown, past the bakery, past the grocery store, past every logical errand location. Then she parked beside the Meadowbrook Savings Bank, a building that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1970s. Beige walls, fading signage, narrow windows, a place untouched by time. She stepped out, walking slower than usual, clutching her purse with both trembling hands. She went inside and stayed inside. 10 minutes. 20. 40. An hour. I sat in my parked car with every muscle tense, watching the bank door like it was the gate to another world. At 12:58, she finally emerged. But she wasn't alone. Walking beside her was a man, tall, silver-haired, immaculately dressed in a charcoal coat that probably cost more than our rent. He held himself with practiced confidence, the kind that comes from wealth or power or both. They weren't touching. They weren't smiling. Yet something between them felt familiar. They spoke briefly. My mother nodded. The man placed a hand on her arm, gentle, deliberate, almost proprietorial. My stomach knotted. She returned to her car and drove home. But the man, he walked to a sleek black Jaguar and drove toward the wealthy part of town. And I followed him. I told myself I wasn't spying. I was just gathering answers, protecting my mother, trying to unravel the unease that had been growing in my chest for years, unacknowledged but present. After a 15-minute drive, he pulled into a gated neighborhood I'd only ever seen in real estate ads. Wide lawns, pristine fences, homes like miniature mansions. He steered into the driveway of a sprawling stone estate with columns, balconies, and a sculpted fountain. The kind of place people like us didn't belong. I sat at the curb, pulse racing, staring at the house like it held the missing chapter of my mother's life. Who was this man? What business did she have with him? And why had it gone on for 15 years? When I finally drove home, she was acting like nothing unusual had happened. She made soup, she asked me about my day, she sang softly to herself while washing dishes. But her hands still trembled. And in that moment, watching her back turned to me, her shoulders heavy, her voice tired, I realized this wasn't something small. This wasn't an errand. This wasn't bank stuff. This was something that had hollowed her from the inside out for 15 years. Something she had never meant for me to discover. And the truth I was about to uncover, the real reason she went to that bank every Tuesday, still haunts me to this day. When Julian searches his mother's hidden documents that night, he discovers a name he has never heard, a debt he didn't know existed, and a connection between his mother and the wealthy man that will tear apart everything he thought he knew about their family. The real nightmare begins when he realizes the Tuesday visits weren't voluntary, and the past she hid is darker than he ever imagined. I don't know what I expected when I walked back into the house after trailing the silver-haired stranger to his mansion. Anger, maybe. Confusion, definitely. But what I felt most was fear. Fear of what my mother had been carrying alone. Fear of what I'd forced myself into discovering. Fear of what 15 years of secrecy might truly mean. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table peeling carrots for dinner, humming the same old lullaby she used to sing when I was a kid with fevers. When she looked up at me, her smile was warm but tired. "You're home early, baby." Traffic wasn't bad," I lied, hanging my jacket over the chair. "Did you get everything done today?" Her hands stilled over the carrots. For a half-heartbeat, her eyes clouded with something. Worry, dread, shame. Then she forced a smile. "Just the usual bank stuff." Bank stuff. The words echoed like an accusation. I nodded, pretending to accept it, pretending I didn't know she had lied, pretending everything was normal. We ate dinner in silence. She asked about work. I told her. She laughed at a joke I barely told. We watched TV for 20 minutes before she went to her room early, claiming a headache. But I couldn't sleep. My mind was a whirlpool of questions I couldn't escape. So, around midnight, I walked to her room. The light was off, but the soft glow of the street lamp filtered through the curtains just enough for me to see her curled frame under the blanket. Her breathing was steady, peaceful, the peacefulness of someone exhausted far beyond physical fatigue. I looked around the room, searching for something, anything that might explain the Tuesday ritual.
Then I noticed something I had never paid attention to before. At the corner of her closet, beneath folded blankets, was an old metal cash box, the kind people used to store documents in before digital records existed. Mom never kept junk. She loved minimalism, order, quiet spaces. That box didn't fit her style, which meant it was important. More importantly, it was hidden. My heart hammered as I pulled it out. It was heavier than I expected. Inside, I found dozens of envelopes neatly stacked, tied with a red ribbon. Some were yellowed with age, some were crisp and new. All were bulging with papers. My hands trembled as I opened the oldest one. Inside was a letter addressed to my mother. Dear Evelyn, as agreed, your weekly installments will prevent legal escalation. By R. Kingsley. R. Kingsley? I'd never seen the name before. The next envelope held receipts, not printed ones, carbon copies handwritten, each dated on a Tuesday, some from 15 years ago, some from this year. Each receipt had the same signature, Raymond Kingsley, the same name, the same handwriting, the same Tuesdays. The same man. I followed into the gated mansion. I opened another envelope, and another. Each one was worse than the last. Cold demands for payment, threats hidden behind polite phrasing, schedules, reminders, and numbers. $850 a week, paid in cash every Tuesday. I swallowed hard. That was more than Mom's rent when I was a kid. That was more than she made weekly working both of her jobs. And she had paid it for 15 years. I felt my throat close with something between anger and heartbreak. Who the hell was Raymond Kingsley? Why did she owe him so much? What legal escalation did he threaten her with? And why had she endured this all alone? My racing thoughts froze when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. Mom stood in the doorway, her face pale, her hands shaking at her sides. "Julian, what are you doing?" Her voice cracked before she finished the sentence. I held up one of the receipts. "What is this, Mom? Why have you been paying this man every Tuesday for 15 years? Her eyes glistened, and she pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. I could see the exact moment her strength crumbled. She walked to the bed and sat down slowly, as if her bones had suddenly aged decades in seconds. "I didn't want you to ever see this. I prayed you never would. Why didn't you tell me?" Her voice was so soft I almost didn't hear it. "Because I didn't want you to ever hate your father." My heart stopped. What does Dad have to do with this? He left when I was 12. He hasn't contacted us in 16 years. She looked down at her hands, aged, tired, trembling. "Your father didn't leave. He ran." "Ran? From what?" "From Raymond Kingsley." There was a long, suffocating pause. "When your father got involved with him, he made a mistake. A terrible one. One he could never repay. And when your father disappeared, that debt became mine." I stared at her. "You took it on? Why? Why would you?" "Because if I didn't," she whispered, her voice cracking, Kingsley would have destroyed us. He threatened to seize everything, even take you from me. My blood ran cold. She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her face. So I paid, every Tuesday, without fail. I felt the world tilt under my feet. All those nights she worked late, all those years she skipped vacations, all the time she said, "We can't afford that right now." All the exhaustion she hid behind smiles. It wasn't poverty, it was sacrifice. She wasn't just keeping us afloat, she was protecting us from a man who lived in a mansion while draining her dry. And I realized, with a sickening twist in my stomach, that the truth was still only half revealed. I had uncovered the debt, but not the reason behind it. Not the secret my father left behind, not the danger that had been quietly shaping our lives since I was a kid. And whatever that secret was, Mom had been willing to lose everything to keep it buried.
When Julian forces his mother to reveal what debt his father left behind, the truth pulls him into a world of threats, manipulation, and crimes that didn't die when his father vanished. And the worst part? Raymond Kingsley doesn't just want money, he wants something that involves Julian himself. My mother sat on the edge of her bed, shoulders trembling, fingers twisting the corner of a pillowcase. Seeing her like that, small, defeated, was something I didn't know how to process. She had always been unbreakable to me, a force of nature, a quiet warrior who got things done. But now she looked like a woman who had been bleeding silently for 15 years. "Mom," I said softly, sitting across from her. "You have to tell me everything. I can't help if I don't know the truth." She inhaled shakily, nodding as though bracing for impact. "I always knew this day would come. I just hoped it wouldn't." "Start with Dad," I said. "What did he do?" She closed her eyes for a long, painful moment. "Your father wasn't the man you think he was, Julian. I barely remember him. All I know is he left. He didn't leave us," she said quietly. "He left because he was running from something he couldn't fix." "Kingsley?" She nodded. "But why? What connection did they have?" Mom wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "Your father used to work for Kingsley. Long before you were born. Back then, Kingsley wasn't just a wealthy businessman. He was involved in things. Dangerous things. The kind of things that don't make the news but control the people who do." My stomach twisted. "Like what? Money laundering? Strong-arming small businesses? Forcing people into deals they couldn't get out of? Your father started as one of his drivers. That's how it always begins, small jobs, small favors. And then?" Mom looked away, her voice tight with shame. "And then your father stole from him." The words hit like a slap. "Dad stole?" I whispered. "He thought he could get us out."
she said. Kingsley sent him on a routine delivery one night. Your father found a briefcase in the trunk, full of cash. Illegal money, money Kingsley was hiding from federal eyes. He panicked. He thought if he took it, if he ran, we could finally disappear and start over. My chest felt hollow. How much did he take? 200,000, she whispered. Money Kingsley needed to buy someone's silence. When your father ran with it, his entire operation almost collapsed. Someone else got arrested. Someone else talked. Kingsley blamed your father for everything. And Dad just disappeared? Yes. He didn't leave because of us. He left because Kingsley promised he would kill anyone connected to him. My breath hitched. So Kingsley came after you?
She nodded, eyes glistening. 2 weeks after your father disappeared, Kingsley showed up at our old townhouse. You were playing with blocks on the floor, clueless and innocent. I'll never forget the way Kingsley looked at you. Like you were collateral, like you were leverage. My blood froze. What did he say? He said your father owed him, and if he couldn't collect from him, her voice trembled, he'd collect from us. Silence pressed against the walls of the room. Mom opened the metal box again and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, yellowed, fragile, stained by time. She handed it to me with trembling fingers. It was a handwritten agreement. 15 years of weekly payments. $850 each Tuesday. Cash only. Failure to comply would result in appropriate consequences. Signed by me. You signed this, I whispered. I didn't have a choice, she said. If I refused, he would have had you taken. He said accidents happen. Fires, car crashes, things that don't get investigated when you know the right people. My hands shook as I traced the crude signature at the bottom. My mother had paid more than $663,000 over 15 years. Money we never had. Money she worked double shifts to scrounge together. Money that cost her youth, health, and any dreams she ever had for her own life. And Kingsley lived in a mansion with marble floors and imported rugs. He bled you dry, I whispered. All because of Dad's mistake. No, she said softly, her voice breaking. Because Kingsley doesn't let go. He never intended for me to finish paying. He wanted control. That was always the real debt. I counted the envelopes again. Mom, you stopped paying. She flinched. You missed this week, didn't you? That's why you were shaking this morning. Her silence was confirmation. Mom, why would you stop now, after all these years? What changed? She swallowed, her throat tight. Kingsley doesn't want the money anymore. Then what does he want? Her eyes filled with terror, not fear, not sadness, terror. You, she whispered. My entire body went cold. Me? Why? Because you're turning 29 in a few months, and your father made a second agreement before he disappeared. A deal Kingsley never cashed in, one he's coming to collect now. What deal? I asked, my voice barely there. Mom lifted her tear-streaked face to mine.
Your father promised Kingsley you would work for him, starting at 29, to settle the rest of the debt. A chill ran up my spine. You knew about this? For 15 years? She nodded, sobbing silently. And I've been paying and paying, hoping he'd forget, hoping the debt would end with me. But last week, he told me the payments were done. It was time to honor the original agreement. My breath caught in my throat. He wants you, Julian. He wants you to replace your father. The metal box slid from my hands and crashed onto the floor with a hollow clang. Everything inside me twisted into a knot of dread and disbelief. Because suddenly I understood why my mother had been trembling, why she had been so quiet, so pale, so terrified. Kingsley wasn't done with us. He was just beginning.
Julian thinks he can confront Kingsley and end the madness, but the man who controls half the county's secrets will make it painfully clear this isn't about debt or money or even revenge. It's about legacy. And Kingsley already has a plan for Julian, one that started long before he was born. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw this silver-haired man walking beside my mother outside the bank. I saw his hand on her arm. I saw the hollow look in her eyes when she told me, "He wants you now, Julian." Those words echoed like a curse. Around 3 a.m., while Mom finally drifted into a restless sleep, I sat alone in the living room staring at the metal box, its lid bent where it had hit the floor earlier, envelopes spilling slightly from the side. The truth was no longer vague shadows. It was here, laid bare. My father hadn't just stolen money. He had stolen time. My mother's time, my childhood, our lives. And in his desperation to escape, he signed me away like property. I gripped the edge of the couch until my knuckles went white. How do you hate someone you barely remember? How do you forgive a man you never got to confront? How do you carry the weight of a stranger's sins? By sunrise, the questions hadn't softened, they sharpened. At 8:12 a.m., my mother shuffled into the living room. She looked drained, eyes puffy, shoulders hunched, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know what you're thinking. And the answer is no. You can't confront him." "Why not?" I snapped. "Why can't I talk to him? Why can't I end this?" She sat slowly, as if gravity had doubled. "Because that's exactly what your father tried to do, and he vanished." The word hit like a cold slap. Vanished. Not moved. Not left. Not ran. Vanished. "Mom," I said quietly, "you don't honestly think that Kingsley killed him?" She whispered. "Yes, I do. Or worse." A chill crawled up my spine. Worse? What's worse than dead? She looked at me with hollow eyes. Living under Kingsley, being indebted to him, owing him loyalty you can't break without risking everything. "Julian," her voice cracked, "men like him don't need to kill you to own you." I leaned back, letting the words sink in. "Mom," I said after a moment, "why did Dad choose 29? Why that age?" She hesitated. Too long. "Mom, why 29? She wrung her hands. "Kingsley has a system. He doesn't take people when they're too young. He waits until they're old enough to be useful, but young enough to mold. Your father said 29 would give us time. Time to disappear. Time to outrun him." I laughed bitterly. Great plan. Except it didn't work. She lowered her head in shame. "I truly believed if I paid enough, he would leave you alone, that money could replace you." A sickening realization hit me. That's why you killed yourself with work. That's why you never took days off. That's why we never had birthdays at restaurants or trips or new clothes or anything. You weren't just paying debt, you were trying to buy me back." Her tears fell silently. Every week, I prayed the payments would be enough. But Ray, Kingsley, he never let go. And now he's decided it's time. I stood abruptly. "Then I'll go to the police." She shot up, terror in her eyes. "No!" Her voice cracked through the house like a whip. "You don't understand, Julian. Kingsley has police on his payroll, judges, attorneys, bank managers, people in places you don't even imagine. You think you can walk into a station and report him? They'll call him before they print the report."
Her hands cupped my face, trembling violently. "Please, please don't make the same mistake your father did. If you confront him without a plan, he will swallow you whole." I gently pulled away. "Then I need to know everything. Every detail, every threat, every payment, every person he's connected to." She shook her head, looking suddenly frail. "Even if you gather the pieces, you don't know how he thinks. Kingsley doesn't operate like a criminal. He operates like a king." A king. That word lingered with an unsettling familiarity. Kingsley. King. A man who built an empire on fear, on silence, on binding people with invisible chains. I paced the room. What about Dad's note? Anything he left behind? Anything that could help? She hesitated again. Longer this time. "Mom," I said sharply, "you're still hiding something." Her eyes darted toward the hallway, toward the attic door at the end. My pulse quickened. "What's up there?" She closed her eyes with a pained expression. "Something your father left behind. Something Kingsley can never know I kept. Something I hoped I would never have to show you." Before she could protest, I walked toward the attic door, pulled down the creaky wooden ladder, and climbed into the dusty, dim space filled with old boxes and forgotten furniture. "Which one?" I asked. She pointed with a shaking hand to a small wooden chest tucked behind a stack of winter coats. I pulled it out and carried it downstairs. The chest wasn't locked. Inside lay a faded photograph of my father shaking hands with a younger Kingsley, a manila folder stuffed with documents, a flash drive sealed in a plastic bag, and a handwritten note addressed to my mother. "If anything happens to me, hide this and protect Julian at all costs. From David." My heart pounded in my chest. "What is all this?" I whispered. "This," Mom said, voice trembling, "is the thing Kingsley has been searching for. The thing your father stole to buy our freedom. The thing that made him run." She lifted the folder with trembling hands. "These aren't just debts, Julian. They're records, transactions, names, dates, proof of every crime Kingsley ever committed from 1994 to 2009. Your father didn't just steal money. He stole the only evidence that could destroy Kingsley's empire." The room went silent, completely silent. I felt the weight of the papers, the weight of my father's mistake, the weight of Kingsley's 29-year deal settling over me like a suffocating blanket. I swallowed hard. "Mom," I whispered, "if Kingsley finds out we have this, he won't just want me." She nodded slowly, her voice barely a breath. "He'll come for both of us." up at their house that night, knocking softly but insistently. Julian learns the real meaning of danger and just how far Kingsley's reach extends. The wooden chest sat open on the coffee table, the documents inside glowing faintly under the yellow lamp. The room felt smaller, tighter, as if the walls had leaned in to hear what we were saying. My mother sat perfectly still, hands clenched in her lap, watching me flip through the first pages of the folder. What I saw inside made my pulse race. Names, amounts, offshore accounts, business fronts I recognized, business fronts I didn't, signatures, transfers, all written in the same looping handwriting, Raymond Kingsley. This wasn't just evidence. This was a death sentence for anyone holding it. Why didn't you give this to the police years ago? I whispered. Mom shook her head sharply. Because you can't blackmail a man who owns the people you'd be blackmailing. And if I'd brought these to the authorities, Kingsley would have known within an hour. It would have been both our funerals. I swallowed, forcing myself to keep flipping through the files. One sheet stopped me cold. It was a ledger entry with a date from 23 years ago. The year I was born. Written next to that date were 3 names: David Hart, Raymond Kingsley, a baby boy, pending assignment at age 29. My stomach twisted violently. What the hell is this? Mom's breath hitched. Your father made more than one bad choice. Kingsley ran a wider operation than just intimidation. He groomed young men, brought them into his network, promised them power, money, security. Your father was one of them until he realized the cost. Me, I whispered. Her silence was the answer. He promised me to Kingsley? My voice cracked. He promised his infant son to— No, Mom said desperately. He didn't promise you. He was cornered, Julian. Kingsley controlled him. If your father didn't commit to training his own child into Kingsley's organization, he would have been killed. So he sold me instead, I snapped. Her eyes filled with tears. He thought he could run. He thought he could take the documents, disappear, and keep you safe. Well, he failed. A heavy silence settled between us. One thick enough to suffocate. I closed the folder, pushing it away before I threw it across the room. Mom leaned forward, her voice trembling. We need to burn it. What? We need to burn everything. The papers, the flash drive, every piece of evidence. If Kingsley even suspects you've seen this— He already wants me, I said bitterly. Burning it won't stop him. Her face paled. Julian, listen to me. A sudden, soft knock echoed from the front door. We both froze. Not a pounding knock, not frantic, not angry. Just 3 soft taps. Calm, polite, deliberate, like someone knocking on a neighbor's door for sugar. Mom's eyes went wide with terror. Don't move! Another 3 taps. My heart hammered against my ribs. My breath came shallow and sharp. The air felt electrified. Mom stood slowly, silently, stepping toward the door like she was walking to a cliff edge. Mom, stop! I whispered. Don't answer. She shook her head, whispering, If we don't answer, they'll break it down. They. Not he. They. My blood turned cold. She approached the door and looked through the peephole just for a second, and her hand slapped over her mouth as she stumbled back like she had seen a ghost. Mom! I hissed. Who is it? She looked at me with eyes full of pure panic. It's Kingsley's man. My pulse spiked. How does he know we're—
Her voice broke. "Because today is Tuesday." The meaning hit me like ice water. Mom hadn't gone to the bank today. She missed her payment. For the first time in 15 years. This wasn't a coincidence. Kingsley sent someone to check on her. The knock came again. 3 taps, soft and patient. I grabbed the folder, the flash drive, and stuffed them back into the chest, sliding it under the couch. "Don't answer it," I whispered. "Please." But Mom shook her head. "If I don't, he'll assume I'm defying him." She steadied herself, inhaled deeply, and reached for the doorknob. I grabbed her wrist. "Mom, he can't come in. We're not obligated." "He's not here for money," she whispered. "He's here to remind us that he can reach us anywhere." Before I could stop her, she unlocked the door and cracked it open. Standing on our porch was a man in a dark suit. His hair was slicked back, his expression composed, almost serene. He wasn't intimidating by size. He was intimidating by stillness. The kind of stillness that suggested he could kill someone without raising his voice. "Mrs. Hart," he said politely, "Mr. Kingsley was concerned when you didn't arrive today." Mom's voice shook. I wasn't feeling well." He smiled with no warmth. "We all have off days, but Mr. Kingsley values consistency. You understand." He leaned slightly, his eyes landing on me behind her. "Julian," he said with a knowing nod, "you look just like your father." A shiver stabbed down my spine. "How do you know who I am?" I asked tightly. He smirked. "Mr. Kingsley has always been invested in your future." My mother swayed, gripping the doorframe for support. I stepped forward. "What does Kingsley want?" The man's eyes flicked to my mother, then back to me. "He requests your presence. Tonight. At the Meadowbrook estate." Mom gasped. No, he isn't ready." "He's 28. Close enough." I stiffened. "And if I say no?" The man offered a pleasant smile that chilled my blood. "Then I give Mr. Kingsley your answer, and he proceeds accordingly." Accordingly. A word that carried weight, threat, consequence. Mom's grip tightened on my arm. The man tipped his head. "I will be parked outside. You have 1 hour." He stepped back and walked calmly to a black sedan idling at the curb. Mom shut the door, locking it twice, her whole body shaking. "Julian, you can't go," she whispered. "We don't have a choice," I said. Her knees buckled, and I caught her before she fell. "He'll destroy us," she cried softly. "He'll destroy everything." I held her tightly. "No," I said, though fear was clawing at my insides. "Not if we use what Dad left behind. We have leverage." She shook her head violently. "You don't understand. Leverage means nothing to a man like Kingsley. He doesn't fear the truth. He controls the consequences." But I wasn't listening anymore. In less than an hour, I would be face to face with the man who had orchestrated my entire life without me knowing it. And whatever he wanted with me, I was about to find out. Julian goes to Kingsley's mansion believing the evidence might protect him, but Kingsley reveals something far darker, that the debt isn't about money or documents. It's about Julian fulfilling a role his father failed, one Kingsley has been preparing for since the day Julian was born. And turning back won't be an option.
The sky was ink black by the time I stepped out onto the porch. The air felt heavy, dense, like the atmosphere before a storm. The black sedan waiting at the curb flickered with a faint interior light as Kingsley's man, stone-faced, patient, sat behind the wheel. Mom clutched my arm from behind, her voice trembling. "You don't have to do this. We can run, tonight. We can disappear." "And go where?" I whispered. "Kingsley found Dad in 3 days." She went silent. I gently pulled away, squeezing her hand. "I'm coming back. I promise." But I wasn't sure if the promise was for her or for myself. When I slid into the back seat of the sedan, the door shut with a muted thud. The man didn't turn around. He simply began driving, the engine whisper quiet. I listened to the hum of the tires, my pulse pounding in my ears. Does Kingsley want me for some job? Some task? Some repayment? "You'll find out soon," the man said, without inflection. "You keep saying I'm close enough to 29. What does that even mean?" He gave the slightest shrug. "Mr. Kingsley is sentimental about numbers. He likes things to align." I frowned. "Align with what?" He smiled faintly at the mirror. "Legacy." The words sent a cold ripple through me. Legacy. Kingsley's legacy. My father's legacy. The legacy I apparently had been born into without knowing. The car wound through streets I didn't recognize until we reached the outskirts of Meadowbrook. Wealthy, secluded, quiet. Houses here weren't houses. They were estates, miniature kingdoms, surrounded by wrought iron gates and manicured hedges. Kingsley's mansion stood at the end of a long private road. It wasn't ostentatious. It wasn't flashy. It was simply imposing. 3 stories tall, pale stone walls washed in moonlight, towering windows shadowed by velvet curtains. A house that held secrets the way a prison held inmates. 2 stone lions flanked the steps. The car stopped at the base of the drive. "Mr. Kingsley is waiting inside," the driver murmured. My hand hesitated on the door handle for a heartbeat, but only one. I pushed it open and stepped into the chilled night air. The front door opened before I even reached the steps. A woman in her 50s stood there, tall, elegant, with sharp cheekbones and hair pinned into a neat bun. She looked more like a museum curator than a housekeeper. "Julian Hart," she said, in a calm, low voice. "Mr. Kingsley has been expecting you." She led me through the grand foyer, marble floors, chandeliers dripping crystal, paintings of stern-faced men staring down from the walls. Each portrait radiated authority, power, control. The woman stopped before a set of carved wooden double doors. "He is inside. Please enter." The doors swung inward. Raymond Kingsley stood with his back to me, hands clasped behind him, staring out the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the moonlit courtyard. His posture was rigid, deliberate, a man who commanded rooms simply by inhabiting them. "Julian," he said without turning around, "welcome." My throat tightened, but I walked forward. When he finally turned, his silver hair glinted like strands of ice. His expression was unreadable, calm, composed, almost gentle. But his eyes were something else. Cold, calculating. Eyes that dissected, assessed, claimed. "You look just like your father," he said with a faint, knowing smile. "Except for the eyes. You have your mother's." I clenched my jaw. "Why did you summon me?" He chuckled softly, moving toward a leather armchair. "Summon? Such a dramatic word. I invited you. You made it clear it wasn't optional. Most invitations worth accepting aren't. He gestured for me to sit. I remained standing.
He exhaled slowly. Your mother raised you well, determined, loyal, but she made a mistake. He met my gaze. She believed she could keep you out of your father's world. I had no world with my father. He abandoned us. Abandoned, Kingsley echoed softly. No, Julian. Your father sacrificed himself for you. The words made my stomach twist. Your father was brilliant, flawed, impulsive, but brilliant. I invested years into shaping him, elevating him, preparing him. But he lacked discipline. He lacked foresight. He lacked the courage to finish what he started. I scowled. You turned him into a criminal. Kingsley smiled. No, I gave him purpose and legacy. There it was again, that cursed word, legacy. What do you want with me? Kingsley studied me for a long moment, his eyes sharp and assessing. Your father owed me more than money. He owed me a successor. My heart hammered. A successor? You want me to run your empire, your operation, whatever you call this? Kingsley's smile deepened. Not run, inherit. He stepped closer, his voice lowering. You were born for this role. Your father groomed you for it before he lost his nerve. I have waited 28 years for this moment, for you. You were the contingency he left behind. I'm not joining you, I said firmly. You haven't heard what the position entails. He tilted his head. I don't care. And you don't care, he said calmly, that your mother will be without protection if you refuse?
I stiffened. Don't threaten her. He don't threaten, he said almost gently. I state outcomes. If you accept what is rightfully yours, she will be safe, untouchable. If you refuse? He shrugged lightly. The world is unpredictable, Julian. Tragic things happen. My breath hitched. He stepped even closer, his powerful presence suffocating. You belong to this world, he whispered. You always have. Your father made sure of it. I'm not my father. No, Kingsley agreed, eyes gleaming. You're better. I swallowed hard, fear coiling in my gut. Why me? I asked. Why not someone else? You must have men who would do anything for you. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I don't want loyalty, Julian. I want lineage. My heart stopped. Lineage? I repeated. Kingsley leaned forward slightly. Your father was supposed to continue what my father started, just as I continued what his father began. But he broke the chain. His voice dropped to a chilling whisper. You were born to repair it. I felt a cold shiver slice down my spine. What if I say no? Kingsley's eyes softened, almost pitying. Then your mother will suffer, he said simply. And you will learn what it means to lose everything before finally accepting your place. The room felt suddenly too small,
Too dark, too dangerous. Kingsley walked back toward the window. "You have 48 hours," he said. "Then I will come for your decision." My legs felt weak as I turned to leave. "Julian," he called behind me. I stopped. "You can't run," he murmured. "Your father tried. We both know how that ended." I didn't look back. I just walked out, my heart pounding like it might explode, because he was right about one thing. I couldn't run, not without losing everything. Julian returns home shaken, only to find that Kingsley's reach has already infiltrated his life in ways he never imagined. When an unexpected discovery reveals his father's final message, a warning buried within the files, it changes everything.
The black sedan dropped me off exactly where it picked me up. There were no words exchanged, no threats, no instructions, no lingering glances. Kingsley's man simply waited until I closed the door, then pulled away without a sound. The quiet felt unnatural, the kind of quiet that comes right before something breaks. Inside the house, only one lamp glowed in the living room, the one Mom always left on when she worried. She rushed toward me the second I stepped inside, gripping my arms as if she needed physical proof I was still breathing. "What did he say, Julian? What did he want?" I shook my head, too drained to speak. I locked the door, not that it would matter, and sank onto the couch. My mother followed me, sitting beside me, waiting for the truth she already feared. After a long moment, I managed to say it. "He wants me to inherit his empire." Her breath caught, sharp and painful. "Julian, no, he can't." "He's been planning it since I was born," I said bitterly. Dad agreed, or was forced to. Whatever the case, Kingsley believes I'm his legacy. My mom's hands flew to her mouth as she shook her head violently. "He's twisting everything. You don't owe him anything. That's not what he thinks." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, breathing hard. My mind wouldn't stop replaying Kingsley's words, his calm certainty, the way he looked at me like I was already carved into his future. "I said if I refuse, you'll suffer for it." My mother stiffened. "Julian, listen to me. Raymond doesn't own you. He owned your father. He tried to own me, but he doesn't get to take you too." "Mom," I rubbed my face with both hands. "I don't think it's about what he gets to do. It's about what he can do." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't argue. She didn't lie. She didn't try to reassure me with promises she couldn't keep. Instead, she whispered, "There's one thing we haven't checked yet." I lifted my head. "What?" "The flash drive. You didn't open it." I blinked. In all the chaos, I had forgotten the flash drive sealed in plastic in the wooden chest. My father's final attempt to communicate with us. My stomach tightened. "You think there's something important on it?" Mom nodded slowly. "Yes. If your father left it behind, yes. He knew Kingsley better than anyone." I retrieved the chest from under the couch, peeled open the plastic, and pulled out the small flash drive. It felt icy cold in my hand, like it had been waiting.
We went to my laptop at the dining table. Mom hovered behind me as I plugged it in. A single folder appeared. David for E. My mother pressed a hand to her chest. I opened the folder. There was only one video file. Don't trust him. My breath stalled in my lungs. Mom sank into the chair beside me, gripping its edge. I clicked the file. The screen lit up with my father's face. Not the smiling young man from the old photo albums, not the man I vaguely remembered lifting me onto his shoulders. This version was older, worn, haggard. His eyes were red-shot and frantic, his face gaunt like he hadn't slept in days. He sat at a small kitchen table, the one from our old townhouse. His hands shook as he adjusted the camera. "Evelyn," he whispered, his voice cracked. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone." Mom gasped softly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't run," he continued. "Not from you, never from you. I ran because Kingsley would never let me go. I tried to be stronger. I tried to outsmart him. But he owns everything. Everyone." My mother let out a quiet sob. "But you need to know," Dad said, eyes trembling. "The debt wasn't about the money. It never was. The money was just a leash." He took a deep breath. "Kingsley believes in legacy, in building a dynasty, in choosing successors who will expand his reach. I was supposed to be one of them. But I saw what he really was, what he did to people, to families, and I refused." He looked straight into the camera, desperation in his eyes. "That was my first mistake." He swallowed hard. "My second mistake was you, Julian." The room tilted for a moment. My heart thudded painfully. Dad continued, voice filled with guilt. "When you were born, Kingsley insisted I sign the lineage agreement. I told him no. I refused to let him claim you. That's when he threatened Evelyn, said he'd take you both if I didn't comply." My mother turned pale. "So I pretended to agree," Dad said shakily. "But I never intended to let Kingsley have you. The day I took those documents wasn't just about the money. It was about stealing the records he needed to enforce your contract." My eyes widened. "What contract?" I whispered. Dad leaned closer to the camera. "Julian was never mine to promise. You have to understand that. I never wanted this for him. Never." He wiped sweat from his forehead. "Kingsley thinks he can shape anyone. He thinks he can mold them into his image. But Julian, he's different. He's not like us. He's not meant for that darkness." Mom broke down completely, burying her face in her hands. Dad inhaled shakily. "The drive contains evidence, everything, enough to destroy Kingsley if you survive long enough to use it. But you need to know." He paused, staring into the camera with tortured eyes. "Kingsley won't let either of you live alive if he learns the truth." The screen flickered as he leaned back. "My last warning, he whispered, don't trust him ever. And don't—" The video glitched. Static filled the screen, the image distorted. And more static. Then it cut to black. I stared at the laptop, my pulse racing, my mind spinning. "Julian," Mom whispered through tears, This changes everything. We have proof. We can expose him." "No," I said numbly. "Dad said it himself. Kingsley owns everything. If we try to expose him without a plan, we're dead." Mom squeezed my arm, voice trembling. "Then what do we do?" I looked back at the blank screen. My father had given me a warning, but he hadn't given me the answer. And yet, deep in my gut, I felt something shift. A resolve. A spark.
Something Kingsley hadn't counted on. "We don't run," I said softly, "and we don't submit." Mom looked at me, fear and hope mingling in her eyes. "Then what?" I closed my laptop slowly. "We fight." But even as I said it, I had no idea the price that fight would demand. Before Julian can form a plan, Kingsley makes his first move, and it's brutal. The disappearance, a betrayal, and a brutal ultimatum force Julian into the darkest night of his life. And when he finally confronts Kingsley with the truth his father left behind, he uncovers a secret even more devastating than the debt itself.
The house was still trembling with the weight of my father's warning when the lights suddenly flickered. Once, twice, then went out completely. Mom gasped, grabbing my arm. "Julian!" I said, "Stay here. Don't move." I grabbed my phone, using its dim flashlight to cut through the darkness. The house was silent, unnaturally so. No cars outside, no wind, no sound except our own breathing. Then a dull thud came from the back door. Mom froze. He wouldn't come here tonight." I whispered, "He doesn't need to." Before she could respond, glass shattered somewhere down the hall. Mom clapped a hand over her mouth to stifle her scream. I grabbed her wrist and pulled her behind me. But then, a voice echoed through the darkness. Soft, calm, precise. "Julian." My heart sank into my stomach. It was Kingsley's man, the same one from the sedan. How did he get inside?" Mom whispered. I said hoarsely, "He didn't get inside. He was always inside." The realization chilled me. Kingsley didn't need to break in. He had keys. The man stepped into the faint glow of my phone's light, perfectly composed, brushing glass from the sleeve of his suit. "Mr. Kingsley received your message." "I didn't send one," I snapped. He smiled thinly. "You refuse to make a decision tonight. That is a message." Mom clung to my arm. "Julian, please."
The man held up a small black device. "I'm here for the evidence your father stole." My blood went cold. "What evidence?" "Don't insult me," he said quietly. "We know it survived." My heart thudded painfully. He knew. He knew we had the files. "Mr. Kingsley is willing to forgive the lapse, but only if you come with me now. I'm not going anywhere." "Then your mother will." Mom stiffened, a tremor shaking through her. "Please, I've given you everything I had. Haven't I done enough?" The man shook his head. "This is not about you anymore, Mrs. Hart." I stepped forward. "Leave her out of this. You want me? Fine, I'll go. Just leave her alone." The man studied me with mild interest.
If that were true, you would have come willingly earlier. I clenched my fists. Mom's voice trembled. Please, I'll pay. I'll keep paying. Just don't take my son. No one cares about the money, he said sharply. Mr. Kingsley has moved beyond debts. I swallowed hard. Then what does he want? He smiled, stepping closer. A successor. This was it. My father's fear, my mother's exhaustion, my entire life built on someone else's decisions. Something inside me broke. I'm not becoming him. I'm not my father. Kingsley doesn't own me. His expression hardened. He owns your history, your future, and your name. No, I said coldly. He owns your fear, not mine. The man stepped forward, reaching for me, and Mom moved faster than I'd ever seen her move. She grabbed the metal cash box from the table and swung it with every ounce of strength she had. It slammed against the man's head with a sickening crack. He dropped instantly, collapsing onto the floor. Mom staggered back, panting, the box trembling in her hands. Oh God! Oh God! I grabbed her shoulders. Mom, we need to leave. Now. We ran. I didn't pack. I didn't take anything except the wooden chest, the flash drive, and my keys. We tore out of the driveway in my car, tires screeching, the night air sharp and cold. Mom was shaking violently in the passenger seat. He'll know, she whispered. He'll know what I did. He already knew everything, but we have something he doesn't. The evidence, she said weakly. No, I murmured. A warning, and maybe something more. We drove into the next town, pulling into an old motel whose neon sign flickered half dead. I paid cash. No names, no questions. Inside the room, Mom collapsed under the bed, trembling. I sat at the small desk and opened the chest again. The documents stared back at me like ghosts. We can use this. If we leak it strategically. No, Julian, Mom whispered. He'll find us before anyone believes us. You saw the video. You saw... I know, I said, but we also saw something else. I pulled the flash drive back out. There was a second folder. Her head snapped up. What? When the video glitched, when Dad leaned back, I noticed a second file appear in the corner. I swallowed, but it didn't open. Mom's face drained of color. What second file? I plugged the drive into the motel's old computer. 2 files appeared. 1, don't trust him, video. 2, the real contract, document. My pulse roared in my ears. I opened the second file. A scanned legal document filled the screen, old, yellowed, marked with handwritten notes. My father's notes. At the top read, Kingsley Lineage Agreement voided 1995. Voided? My breath hitched. I scrolled. There was a signature line for my father. Unsigned. Completely blank. Then the note in my father's handwriting. He forged the second copy. I never signed the real one. Mom let out a choked sob. Julian, don't you see? I stared at the screen. Shock, relief, rage, all collided at once. My father never bound me, I whispered. Kingsley forged the contract. He faked the signature. The entire deal is illegal. Mom covered her mouth, crying silently. If we leak this, I said, voice trembling, Everyone who ever worked under him will know Kingsley lied. They'll turn on him. He'll be destroyed, she whispered, and he knows it. I finally understood my father's warning. It wasn't just about the crimes. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the empire. It was about the lie holding it all together. Kingsley built his power on fear, but fear collapses the moment truth enters the room. I backed away from the screen. I said softly, "We have one chance. One." Mom wiped her tears. "Which is..." "I send this to everyone who has something to lose if Kingsley stays in power, and everything to gain if he falls." Mom nodded slowly. "But, Julian, once you send it, he'll come for you." I exhaled shakily. "I know."
Julian, I'm not running anymore. He built my life on a lie, but I'm ending his on the truth. I hit send. Every major rival, every past ally, every co-conspirator, every reporter, every name in the ledger, everyone who had ever been touched by Kingsley received the truth. A legal contract voided at its source. Kingsley's empire was built on forged ink. The moment I clicked send, my mom collapsed into my arms, sobbing. I held her tight. We were free, or so I thought, because at that exact second, a single message pinged my phone. Unknown number. Legacy doesn't end, Julian. It adapts. My blood turned to ice. And then another message. See you soon. The motel room suddenly felt colder, smaller, darker. My mother looked at me, dread filling her eyes. Julian, what have you done? I stared at the phone, my hands shaking. I broke the chain, but now he's coming to finish it. Because Kingsley wasn't dead, he wasn't jailed, he wasn't defeated. He was evolving. The truth would destroy him, but he intended to destroy me first. And that's the part that still haunts me. Even now, I don't know which one of us will win.